Okay, so hi all, welcome to this webinar on Cogito, an open source self-sovereign identity management system from Philips. We have with us Marcin and Mark from Philips, who would give you an introduction about the system and also provide you an overview of the ecosystem along with the demo of it. So over to you, Marcin and Mark, to provide us a brief introduction about yourself and start off with it.
Thank you very much, Deepika. I also want to thank you and Jolene for inviting us. It's very nice that we are able to speak about Cogito, which is something we work on and we're very proud of, and we love to share it with as many people as we can. My name is Mark Spanbroek,
and I'm Marcin Czenko.
And we're both from Philips, as you've heard. We're currently broadcasting from the city of Eindhoven, which is in the south of the Netherlands.
Yeah.
We are architects / designers for a team that is called Digital Trust at Philips. It's a team of about 5 people, and we are called Digital Trust and not just a blockchain lab or something.
Which we used to be. In the past, they used to call us blockchain lab.
Yeah. But we broadened our interests. We are not just looking at blockchain, but also at lots of other technologies.
As you will see, that good reasons to actually distance ourselves sometimes a little bit from blockchain.
Yeah.
We'll have some good points, I hope. Yeah.
So for blockchain, we did some proof of the concept within Philips to give you an idea. We worked a bit on supply chain and finance, the usual suspects when it comes to blockchain. But our main interest is in healthcare because we are in Philips, and Philips is mainly a healthcare company nowadays. Apart from blockchain, we also work a lot with other cryptography stuff. For instance, secure multi-party computation, which is a very interesting subject that we don't have time today to go into, unfortunately, but we will talk about Cogito today.
Yeah, our open source identity management system.
Yes, indeed.
So, go ahead, Mark.
So Cogito, allow me to introduce you a bit to Cogito. Cogito is an identity system whereby your identity is owned and controlled by you, the user. You choose what you divulge to others, and you choose which side of you want to show to web apps. And that makes it different than other identity systems. And I also want to put it a little bit into perspective about how this came to be. So I will start off with a little bit of historical context. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong slide. Apologies for this. That's better. That's the disadvantages you have multiple slides that look the same in the presentation.
Nice.
So I want to start off with a historical context, even though historical is a bit of a relative term here. I mean, Bitcoin has only been around for about a decade. But still, there's some interesting things to say about Bitcoin. And it's not, I'm not going to talk much about these kind of things. So what you usually associate with Bitcoin is like price, fluctuations, lots of mining, farms everywhere.
Winning and losing.
Winning and losing, yeah. Playing the markets, large mining farms in China. All very interesting, but I don't think they touch upon the real core of what Bitcoin did. And that is the following. It's that Bitcoin is not a hierarchy. I think that is the main point that behind Bitcoin. What does it mean that it's not a hierarchy? Well, Bitcoin, you don't have to have permission to change the contents of the ledger. You don't have to have permission to participate in the network, to run the network. You also don't have to have permission to add a feature to the software. And you also don't have to have permission to use the software. There's nobody handing out addresses for Bitcoin. You create them yourself.
Right, you don't go to Bitcoin Bank, basically.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
And it all does it without being a hierarchy. And don't get me wrong, hierarchies are not all bad. I mean, we've all been in hierarchies. I mean, this is an example of a hierarchy, a mom with the 2 kids. The kids are obviously very comfortable. I mean, they're going where they're supposed to go, they're safe, their mom takes care of where they're going. This is a very nice hierarchy. And if you lose the hierarchy, then all of a sudden it becomes a bit scary.
Why would you like to lose hierarchy?
Well, we'll come to that. We'll come to that. Okay. So this kid also looks a bit scared. I mean, it's the first time he goes on a bike on his own. He might fall down. This is pretty scary stuff. The good part about it, that is, he's now free to go wherever he wants to go. He's no longer has to go where his mother has to go.
Yeah, he can change the direction, has its own helmet. Very cool.
Yeah, indeed. So there are trade-offs between having a hierarchy and not having a hierarchy. And that also applies to identity. So traditionally, identities are issued by hierarchies, right? For instance, here are 3 examples. The passport, which is issued by a government, very hierarchical institution normally. The bank accounts, issued by banks, very hierarchical. And on the right-hand side, you see the login for a large advertising company. And there, yeah, you are also a bit at the mercy of the provider of it. I mean, if Google decides that you no longer have your login because you did something that they didn't like, yeah, it's gone. But it also provides lots of convenience, so it's a trade-off.
Yeah, and we owe that this is a huge improvement from what we experienced in the past.
Yeah, so you used to have like centralized logins, right? So you had a login and email and password for every single site that you logged into. So that meant that you had to keep lots and lots of usernames and passwords. You had to take care of them.
So at some point you decided I will use the same password everywhere.
That's what people do.
But what paradoxally is actually the whole burden of maintaining or managing or remembering your identities is on your side. But you still don't control your identity. No. You don't own it because it's centralized somewhere by some service provider and you cannot do anything about it.
And the good thing there is that there are some improvements on this. I mean, there's the federated model, as we call it. It's what OAuth and OpenID connect to. It allows you to use the identity, for instance, your Google login in many different other sites. It means you only have to remember one login, but it's not your identity. It's still given to you by Google in this case.
And even though it's kind of origins from federated identities, you kind of will experience difficulties if you try to use Google identity to get to Facebook, for instance.
Sure. Yeah. So it's not ideal. So that what we like, the model that we like even more, of course, which we also try to implement with Cogito, is the model of the self-sovereign identity. You generate your own identity. So how does that work then? Identity without a hierarchy. Well, in blockchains in general, and also in other systems, you create your own identity by generating a cryptographic key pair, a public-private key pair.
From the two of those, usually your public key becomes kind of your identifier, something like username, but hard to remember.
Indeed. So the public key is saying, hey, I'm number something. The public key is a large number, so that becomes your public identifier. The private key is what you keep private in order to prove to others that you are who you say you are. So,
and if someone of you are like a bit of into identity, then you may remember that in 1991 or around this time, there was something called PGP. And PGP was the first attempt to somehow break from centralized hierarchical way of dealing with identity, but it has its own challenges. And the complexity related to key distribution and key management is one thing, But actually, one thing that that we think made PGP effort in the end less substantial and less visible than it could be is user experience. And an average internet user was not really able to hack into PGP, so it stayed with people that were aware of security, about cryptography, and usually became just a hobby for them.
Indeed. And yeah, that bad user experience also results nowadays in, for instance, the loss of lots of money. Lots of people have once in their lifetime created a Bitcoin account for themselves, transferred some money.
Yeah, it seems like easy, yeah? I can generate my public-private key immediately, but
Yes.
before people realize that they really have to take care for their private key, it may be gone.
Yes, and that happens a lot. A lot of the Bitcoin nowadays is just forever locked because people have lost their private keys. So.
Yeah.
So although it's again it's a bit like the kid in this picture, it's freedom, but it's also a bit scary.
Yeah.
And coming back to the user experience that you mentioned, we run into this a lot in our team actually. I mean, we try to make lots of nice proofs of concepts where we wanted to do something with Ethereum, and one of the blockchain implementations that we use. This is the one we use the most because it's fairly advanced. But if you look at the way the tools that the internet nowadays gives you, there are nice tools like MetaMask and things like my Ether wallet, which I've included pictures here, and they do a good service to the community, but they're still very developer focused. You still have to really know what you're doing.
And as you can imagine, we are not doing Bitcoins and financial stuff, but you still see lots of details on the screen that kind of, you see Ether, you see some numbers that, yeah, people that know what it is, they may enjoy that and kind of find it useful and transparent. But if you don't, this may maybe just be overwhelming.
It's overwhelming, indeed.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's overwhelming also means that you're more vulnerable to phishing attacks, which is what you see here on the right-hand side. MyEtherWallet.com had to put up a lot of warning signs, a lot of extra user education, which actually makes the site almost unusable because of all the warnings.
So what people do often, when they get more advanced, of course, they invest money, they educate themselves, they start using hardware tokens and something much more sophisticated. But it requires lots of learning, and it's still difficult for average user.
No. And they're all really focused on money. And since we are a Philips, we don't deal primarily in finance. We have finance departments, of course, but our core thing is healthcare. So whenever we do a proof of concept on Ethereum, we don't want people to be confronted with money all the time when they see our prototype.
Sometimes we just want to move data around. Sometimes we want to let people enjoy easier access to our system, whatever.
Exactly.
But yeah,
exactly. And that has nothing to do with finance. So that is why we started working on Cogito. It's not focused on money. It's
not at all.
No, but it is focused on your identity. So we'll simply show you what Cogito is by guiding you through what we have, our working software.
So Mark already mentioned also that our origins are blockchain a bit, and Cogito is somehow coupled in some way with concept of blockchain. But it's also maybe nice to mention that Cogito per se, identity management ecosystem of Cogito, will not require blockchain to be used in every circumstance.
Correct.
So we take advantage of it where it does make sense, but in our roadmap we actually try to be very flexible around that and make sure that when blockchain is not needed and doesn't add value, Cogito identity system may still be used. But as Mark mentioned, the best way is to actually show you a little bit how it works. The nice thing to mention also about Cogito is that we had Philips at the same time, but the important thing to mention is that Philips is finally really getting open source. So
I mean, we've been like that in the past, but
yeah, we are present in like software community in some way, but we were consuming more sometimes than contributing. But now Philips is actually getting really on track, and Cogito is one of the projects among many more projects, and we hope there will be grow and will be more and more in the future. So it's a kind of exciting time for Philips, and we hope we'll get more and more cool stuff out there. So Cogito is one of them. It's open source, so where do you find Cogito?
On GitHub, of course.
Ah, that's nice. So I will go to my browser in the moment, and it's GitHub. So you see, I am on Cogito homepage, home GitHub page. So we'll not dive into deep aspects of the code and the structure of it. You will find much more stuff here around, but enough to mention, Cogito ecosystem is composed of number of components, and you use those components basically to build your own identity management systems. So in our repository, you find something that we call workspaces, and this is exactly where all our Cogito components can be found.
Yes, we have what they call a mono repo nowadays, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's quite a popular concept. It makes it easier to work with. So number of components. Every component does some very small but specific job, and together they form something. And how we can learn how they actually get together, how to combine them and create something useful, we created for you specifically for that purpose something we call a demo app. It's one of our workspaces down here. And this demo app is the best way to start and to get acquainted with how to use Cogito, how to compose the different elements together. So we think the best way to actually show you, to introduce it to it, is to show you the demo app and how it works.
Yes.
Yeah. So I have already my repository Cogito cloned on my machine. I'm in the folder. You see, it's just one of my projects, open source Cogito. After you clone, you just have to do one thing. Really, you just have to do yarn and yarn, and that's it. And it will install all dependencies, and more or less you're ready to go. But you will find more about this in our documentation, which will point you to a bit later. But I have it done already, so it's ready to start, as all dependencies are installed. So I just go to my demo app. As you remember, this is one of my workspaces. And here, to make it easy, actually, you remember our Cogito identity system is kind of coupled to blockchain. So at the moment to use it, you need to have blockchain actually. So we create a demo app and everything around it in such a way that when you run a one single command, start all, it will actually create an in like local development blockchain for you. We'll deploy something on it and make sure it's ready to use, and immediately we'll start a web-based client in React, so that you can start playing with it immediately. So I will do that. I will start the demo app. It takes a few moments. You see in the background that some things is happening. You see immediately my browser window popping up. And if I switch here back, you will probably see that still something related to setting up the network is happening and so on. Some transactions going through, setting up the contracts and stuff. And just in a moment, you see we are ready. So we get our demo app started. It starts immediately on one single component, which is called Cogito Identity. This is the component that allows you to interact with Cogito Identity. But we mentioned before that your identity is basically a cryptographic pair.
Yes.
So we were thinking a lot about it. So where is the most convenient, most natural place for us nowadays to keep this kind of private stuff that we don't want to lose and we don't want to let other people to get from us? It's probably our smartphone, our mobile device, which
very personal device.
Exactly.
We keep it very close to ourselves.
Which we use already for banking, for lots of very private, very important, and very legal even stuff nowadays. So yeah, this is where our Cogito identity really in the end lives. So our web app just shows us how to interact with it and how to use it in other systems. Yeah. But to really understand what Cogito identity is, we start with our mobile app. That's how we call it. We call it Cogito app. And on the right-hand side of the screen at the moment, you should already be able to see. Yeah, Mark will wave it on the camera. Yeah, it's live. It's really, yeah, we have it here connected to our laptop.
So you see it's connected to our laptop, and you can see it on the screen and both on the webcam.
Yeah, so that's the starting screen when you just first install our Cogito identity app. This is how it says. It's asking, who are you? And that's because, yeah, you have to tell it. So Mark will, yeah.
So I will tap the who am I text. It's a bit of an introduction into the app. If you started for the first time, it will tell you a bit about that you are not always the same person in all circumstances. You might want to behave differently when you're at home or when you're at work, or when you're, for instance, in a Cogito webcast. So I'll get started, and I'll as the first facet of my identity, I will call myself by my name.
So that's a real you.
Yeah.
Well, nobody knows actually.
Yeah,
That's actually right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you can see the system recognizes me. I am Mark.
Yeah.
It also allows me to create different facets of me. So I'll do that right away. I'll tap on Mark again, and you'll see I have.
It's on the list, and you can even see now if you tap on this information button, you see there's something called address, and this address is really your actually public key. It's in principle Ethereum public address, which is derived from your private key.
Indeed. So I'll go back to the list now, and I'll add another me. So I'll say I am at Cogito.
It's good, yeah. It's I have to talk. Right.
So now I can switch around between my Mark identity and my Cogito identity.
Yeah, pretty good. So we have a Cogito app with two identities out there, and on the left-hand side we have our web app with a Cogito identity component ready to use.
Yes.
So, well, what Cogito identity component allows us to get actually, it allows you to extract your public identity, so your public Ethereum address with the facet that you just currently selected on the phone. So if I now in the web app try to read my identity, so we're doing read your identity, you will see something interesting happening. This will be also quite important aspect of Cogito. So you see, it asks us for QR code. Why, Mark?
Yes. So the interesting part is that the keys, they live on your phone.
Exactly.
But the web app lives in the web browser, and they need to communicate with each other through some means. And we don't want to rely on any sort of like private infrastructure, trusted infrastructure.
Yeah.
So we need to exchange something between the mobile app and the web app that allows us to communicate
in a reliable way, basically.
Well,
so
not just reliable, but also privately. Huh? So
true.
What is in
That's
this?
a good point.
What's in this QR code is actually a key that the mobile app will pick up, and the web app also knows that they can use to communicate. So it's end-to-end encryption there happening.
And it's nice that this channel that is created between the Cogito app and the web app doesn't have a clue what's happening.
Indeed, that's purposely how we designed it. We don't want any server or whatsoever to know anything about what people are doing with Cogito. So therefore, the server only sees encrypted packages coming by. It doesn't know anything about it.
So what do we do now?
So,
we see this QR code.
Yeah. So I'll take the phone and I'll start scanning.
So we press this
so
button on the bottom.
I pressed on the button, and now I can point it at Marcin. Hey, but I can also point it at the QR code. So that's what I'll do right now. I pointed at the QR code.
And you see the app recognizes that and immediately confirms. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. So now these two are connected. So we can press the done button in the web app.
Since we're done. So, wow.
There we have it. The web app now knows our Ethereum address, and it knows that we are known as @Cogito.
And you see this address there. Yeah, you can really, when you tap again at the Cogito app and the details of the Cogito identity, you actually see, you'll see that's really the same number in there. So it really communicated with an iOS app and fetched the correct identity. So let me connect again. So I can now, of course, change my identity. So I can move from @Cogito, and now from in different contexts, I will become Mark. And now what I have to do now, the web app knows which identity you talked to the last time. So it remembers which channel to actually use to talk to you. So now if you want to change your identity, you have to show the QR code. Again, you have to scan it. And once you're done, again, you will see, well, it's coming Mark with his public key. And that's what Cogito identity currently can do. It fetches this information. You can use the user-friendly name to present what your user is. But in the end, you know that the identity is as this public key. But this identity, that's like pretty nice. We can get that information, but in the end, we want to do something with it.
And the thing that we've been mostly working on, because it's really something we needed ourselves for our prototypes, is the ability to interact with Ethereum smart contracts.
So it turned out basically that blockchain transactions are the perfect first case that we can make easier.
It's what we needed ourselves, right? So as you may know, Ethereum is a blockchain implementation. It has a concept known as a smart contract. A smart contract is basically a bit of code that lives on the blockchain. So someone put it there and you can call functions on it. And every time you do something with a smart contract, you have to do it through a transaction. So you basically, if you want to call a function smart contract, you create a transaction with the method call and its parameters, and you sign it with your own key.
Your identity.
Exactly.
So our demo app already has an example how to do that. So you can start quickly with blockchain contracts. So I switch in here now to executing contracts example. And see, it starts with something very easy. On the right-hand side, you see in our demo, we always put on the right-hand side some documentation that gives you a little bit of background and introduction what the feature is about. And as Mark mentioned, we are actively working on it, making it better. So you will find references here to main documentation later and all necessary things to keep you going. But so we have in our demo app, I mentioned that we already deployed development blockchain, and we deployed to that blockchain one simple contract called simple storage. What does it do? It keeps a value and allows you to read it or increase it. And just for the purpose of the demo, we increase it always by the same number, by 5 in our case. But yeah, it's up to you. You can create different contracts. Yeah,
of course, there are many interesting contracts already out there, but this is a simple one just to show you that it works.
So now what we maybe didn't mention maybe explicitly is that, well, the contract has something like its state, let's say. Yeah. So as long as you don't modify it, you don't really have to sign the things that are like, you can read the value without identifying yourself. So I should be able to read it now, actually. If I press read, nothing should happen. I should just be able to see it.
Smart contracts are like their state is broadcast throughout the whole network. So if you just listen to the network, you can read all the values of a contract. But changing it indeed requires a signature.
Yeah, let's experience that. So I will read it. So it's very fast. You see nothing really, it's a glimpse of the eye. So it was very fast, and it's 0 because we just deployed that contract when we started our demo app. It's fresh, new. Nobody ever did anything with that contract, but we now will be actually trying to increase it.
Yes.
That's much more interesting. So what will happen now? So when I press increase, you may like to observe what's happening on our mobile app. So when I increase it by 5. See on the right-hand side, the pop-ups a screen that tells that Cogito demo app would like to sign a blockchain transaction with identity Mark. Well, it's cool.
I can reject it or sign it.
Yeah.
In this case, I will just sign it.
Yeah, we like to sign things. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I like touching this touch button. So it's really 2 people signing at the same time. So now it's signed. Well, we didn't see anything happening in the app. Nothing special, but we can read it now. Yeah, we can read it and check it should be increased. So let's see. Yeah, it's there. So our contract is in the blockchain. If I really like to look at this terminal, you may see, yeah, something is happening on the blockchain. So there is some transactions, things like this happening. So
Yeah, indeed.
it's really recorded in the blockchain, which, as you maybe know about blockchain, nobody can really modify that value anymore.
Sure.
It's casted in the rock almost. Yeah.
Oh yeah, all the changes are recorded and cannot be undone.
So we can also, what is handy about Cogito app is that, well, I can even change my identity now. Like, I don't have to remember and always make sure that I am Mark. I could be doing something else. I am at Cogito webinar, and imagine now again I want to increase that value by 5. So we wouldn't like to leak some information from the at Cogito identity that we have, because nobody should know that. So I do increase by 5. I should still see the same identity being used as previously, because the app knows which one is associated with the app. So we get again Mark, and we can sign it again. It's just for fun. And I read it again, and it's 10. So yeah, this is how easy it is to actually interact with Ethereum contracts.
Indeed. This is really the sort of simplicity that we were looking for ourselves in our demos.
Yeah, and Mark mentioned, well, your identity is a keeper.
Yes.
What people often do with keepers.
And they sign stuff and they encrypt stuff. Right?
Yeah, they like encrypting things. It's like something that, like this kind of identity management system opens many interesting doors outside of just blockchain. And as much as this is still pretty much work in progress, some of the things are already ready to play with. And we have our small demo also here called Simple Encryption. We also work on streaming encryption, when you can encrypt arbitrarily big, let's say arbitrary, we hope so at least, but big gigabytes of data. But simple encryption is for the moment a good starter to explain how we can use actually Cogito also to encrypt the stuff. So I will switch to that, and
so this demo will be a bit rough around the edges.
It will be a bit rough, yeah, because this is still very, very early, but it works. We just have to polish it a bit and include better documentation of that. But it's already possible to check it out. So we can have our system in which I can now type some secret text, and I should be able to encrypt it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's select this Mark for the moment, and let's press encrypt. Wow,
that looks
something happened.
That looks encrypted, right?
Looks encrypted. Of course, you have to trust that this is encrypted. But we should be able now also decrypt it. But what you saw, what you realized, when we were encrypting content, the Cogito app wasn't involved. Why?
Well, the good thing about it is that it got the public key from the app, but you didn't see it, because the public key is something that is public. I mean, it's the sort of stuff that you can share. It's the private key that's the important part. That should never be used by the app unless the user has given his consent.
Yeah, because once you encrypt, it doesn't matter. Only you can decrypt it, exactly, as long as you don't leak your private key. That's why it's so important that it stays safe with Cogito app.
Indeed.
But we should be able now use also Cogito app to decrypt this a bit unclear content. Let's see whether it works. So I press decrypt.
Here we are. We're still working on a dialogue around this, by the way. I mean, it should give you a nice prompt, but what you already can see is that the private key is really stored in the keychain of the phone, so it needs this Touch ID. Otherwise, it will not use the private key.
Well, to be honest, it needs my finger.
Yeah, it needs your
finger. Nice. I like that.
It's your phone, right?
Yeah. Cool. Hey, you see that what just happened on the demo app?
Yes.
We see that our secret is back. So yeah, that's how it works. And imagine if you scale it, you can build systems around that really allow you to exchange securely, and thanks to blockchain, because we can take advantage of blockchain in this circumstance.
Mm-hmm. You use both, right? Blockchain.
So, exactly. So you can make sure that the content is safe, and you can use blockchain to actually track it very well. It's like sending really end-to-end encrypted stuff between your friends with track and trace.
Yes, that would be awesome.
Yeah. And what is in the roadmap is many more things. We look at
Definitely.
things that sometimes are called verifiable claims, attestations, things that will let you actually only share with different services, things that are really required to proceed, and you can always change your mind, and you control still what you shared with other entities. Like someone wants to subscribe to a service and need your bank account number because they want to charge you for monthly subscription, they may ask you, give it to me.
Yeah,
and
then you have the choice
exactly.
to either divulge my banking account. Which banking account do I divulge? Maybe my private one or the one from work, etc.
Yeah.
So shall we wrap up with the keynote?
Yeah, let's go to the keynote. So from keynote, we still later will show you a little bit around our landing page. Actually, the keynote will lead us to us, I think, and there we will show you already where you find some documentation, because we are not joking that we are continuously typing it. So it's coming. So I will switch for the moment to our keynote where we just stopped, and Mark will wrap it nice.
Of course. So, as you've seen, we are still fairly young.
Yep.
We're a work in progress. We hope to improve a lot in the coming year. We have a lot on the roadmap. Our Ethereum integration is just a start. Indeed, as you mentioned, we want to get attestations in there. We still want to do a very good security audit before we
and that's actually one of the reasons it was so important for us that Cogito identity stays open source, because it has to gain trust of engineers and people out there. So it has to be clear and transparent how we do things, and you can see.
Everybody should be able to audit it, but we'll want to do a very good audit ourselves as well. Of course, we want to release it on the App Store. I mean, you've seen the iOS app currently. We also want to make an Android version of it.
Yes. So currently, there are some limitations in a way. It's not in the App Store at the moment, but if you get the repository and Xcode account, you can build it yourself.
So as you can see, it's not something you would already roll out to your customers today, but it is something that we are working on hard to enable you to do that in the future.
Yes.
Also, things like backing up your key and restoring your key, those are all on the roadmap.
Exactly, provisioning.
And they take still quite a bit of thinking, and these are things not easy to get well, but it's stuff that we really I think I hope
we try to look at community, try to look at potential competition, let's say, how they do that stuff, and look what crypto they use. So it's we hope to get some interest around some businesses.
Indeed, and to make it really clear, this is not supposed to be a Philips only party. We really want to start building a community around this. You shouldn't have to trust one party with this important stuff like your identity. You should be able to rely on a large community of people, which is also why I'm really glad that we could talk to you at Society. We hope that you are enthusiastic about this. Maybe it fits your interest. Maybe you'd like to check out our website, cogito.mobi. And our GitHub page is also very open, so please. Pull requests are welcome.
We accept pull requests.
Yeah, exactly. We have a Slack channel where we're always available. Except when we're sleeping.
We sleep occasionally.
But a Slack channel where you can get into contact with us, and we really hope that you come to us with questions, and that you eventually we hope there are some contributors to our to this project out there.
Shall we just very shortly glimpse over the landing page? What's already there?
I think we still have a few minutes.
Yeah, sure. So let's take a look here. So here, this is where you are. It's very early, very simple at the moment. We have some small introduction to, if you see the Cogito first time, what can be done for. So you see some scripture on our app. But the most important, we have a tutorial.
Yes.
And a whole documentation. So where shall I click first? Tutorial, documentation?
No, I'm a bit biased because I wrote the tutorial.
Yeah,
so
let's go there. Okay, so with our tutorial, you can actually start from the scratch and build something which is similar to our demo app, but a bit simpler.
Yes.
and immediately see how it works. So it's quite detailed, step by step. We still improve things around, so nothing is cast in stone with respect to our documentation. We continuously work in improving our components. So this tutorial will show you how to integrate the basic components, give you some basic understanding of what they are meant for and how they work.
And this tutorial really, I mean, if you're someone who has worked with React before, this will really help you start create a first small blockchain application that uses Cogito to sign transactions, just like we've shown you with the demo.
Yeah. And then I mentioned that our Cogito identity is the set of Cogito components.
Yes.
And as long as we will work on adding more and more documentation here, basically having more maybe tutorials, topics, or in-depth descriptions, but already our components, most of them are published as NPM packages. They are available in NPM.
So they are Node.js packages that you can use if you use Node.js as a development environment.
Exactly, you can immediately get them. And this is here where you will find more and more information about every single one of them. So this list will grow, we'll be adding more stuff, and you will find more and more information about it. So we try to be verbal enough to guide you through scenarios and how to use our Cogito identity components.
So I think that should be okay. We've shown what we wanted to show.
Yeah.
Might be time now to see if there are any questions
Yes.
from the audience.
Yeah.
I think we might have to leave full screen mode for that, sharing screen, because we cannot currently see anything.
Let's try this. Yeah, I will try to stop sharing for the moment. And, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Marcin and Mark, for taking us through this. Participants, please ask all your queries through the chatted Q&A sections to the panelists.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we have any queries, I personally would like to know what are the challenges or the issues you faced.
That's a very interesting question. Yes. Well, as you can see, one of the main challenges has been the communication between the app, and the mobile app, and the web app. We really like to be able to ensure that the server that's relaying the messages. Ideally, we would not like to have any server at all. Ideally, we just like the mobile phone and the browser to just communicate directly, point to point. But often they are behind NAT connections, which means they cannot see each other. IPv6 is supposed to help a bit with that, and so can some peer-to-peer networks. In the end, we decided to use a very simple server running on AWS, but still, that server should not be able to know anything about the conversations that are happening between the web app and the mobile app. And that took a bit of development effort to make sure that is the case.
Yeah, I think also a bit challenging is to find reliable crypto.
Yes.
And make sure that it's good and that it works.
Yes.
And maybe if I can add at the non-technical side a little bit, that the challenge is that the privacy-related applications and solutions are extra difficult to actually sometimes explain and to introduce to wider audience, because sometimes they're hard. Yeah.
Yep. Thanks for answering that. We have a query from Martin, who says, is it possible to validate the sender when receiving notification in mobile app?
That is an excellent question. When you set up the connection with the QR code, then you are aware of which web app you're interacting with. So when you set up the connection, that is when you are notified of the name of the web app, and the name will also be shown again by the mobile app whenever a transaction needs to be signed. So the web app can no longer spoof that.
Exactly. So the communication channel that is created for the currently selected identity.
Yes,
and it stays like this.
And for the current web app.
Exactly. So if you move away, it's gone basically. So yeah. So and the mobile app always knows which one was it.
Yeah, it knows which web app was associated with which communication channel.
Yes. Yeah. So I think the answer is yes.
Yes.
Right. So any more queries, please feel free to let us know through the chat and Q&A sections.
I see Martin is asking, I cannot be sure about the transaction. Yeah, that the transaction itself, the details of the transaction are currently not showing. That's a good point, right? So if the pop-up, it says just I want to sign a transaction.
Yes.
We did that a bit to simplify the user experience, because some of the well-known apps of which we've shown examples, like MetaMask, they will also pop up a request, hey, do you want to sign this? And then they give you some extra data.
Block numbers and things.
Yeah, but it usually also is very technical, and a normal user would also not be able to.
And if someone wants to spoof you with this, they can create something that will look convincing to you anyway.
Yeah.
So, but here you have this certainty that you know that this interaction that happens between web app and iOS app or mobile app in general is always triggered by you.
Yeah.
And if you see something coming from you with your action, then you would know, but it's hardly possible.
So there's still some trust needed in the web app.
Yes.
We're not taking that away.
Yes, you have to. Yeah, that's again, we came back a little bit to that thing that we open source it also for the reason so that if community notices that we cheat, then we are out of business, basically. Yeah.
I hope it answers Martin's question.
Yep. Yeah, Martin says cool. Thanks, guys.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are any further questions? If there are no further questions, then I think we can round up.
Yeah, sure. So thanks both of you all for taking us through this very interesting session on Cogito. I hope we explore more about the tool in coming days. And thanks a lot to all the participants as well for joining us, and thank you all for taking time for this.
Thank you.
So we also thank you again for invitation. And
I'd like to mention one more thing, by the way.
Yeah.
There's going to be also a meetup in the Netherlands with Cogito, us, probably someone from ING will join, and we'll look forward to seeing you if you're interested.
And also because we maintain that stuff, we continuously work on it. We would say like we will be back. I mean, we will probably have more content to share with you later, and we hope it will become more and more useful actually, and much more versatile.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.